was all a lie. Guys, it was all a lie. She lied.
Hey everybody, hope everybody is doing well and staying safe. The reason for today's video is because I was browsing through jw.org, more specifically their frequently asked questions page, and I was both stunned, startled, and astonished at the deception on there. I mean, I really should not be surprised because I already know how the governing body gets down, but it's something I feel like we need to talk about today. So the intended audience of this frequently asked questions page, I believe, is for people who know little to nothing about Jehovah's Witnesses. They are hoping that if someone hears about Jehovah's Witnesses in passing, or maybe they've seen them in the community, they hope that if a person decides to Google Jehovah's Witnesses, these PR approved sugar-coated answers will pop up. So I'm going to take a look at 3 of the frequently asked questions today specifically, and we're going to talk about how it's lies. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's just lies. So the first frequently asked question I want to talk about is, are Jehovah's Witnesses trying to earn salvation by their door-to-door ministry? So basically, are Jehovah's Witnesses going out from door to door in field service because they believe they need to do that for their lives to be saved? So this is what they say. This was their PR approved sugar-coated answer for, the community, or for somebody who doesn't know any better. So the answer says, no, we engage regularly in our door-to-door ministry, but we don't believe that we earn our salvation by doing such work. Why not? Think of this comparison. Imagine that a benevolent man promised an expensive gift to everyone who showed up at a certain location on a given date. If you really believed the man's promise, would you follow his instructions? No doubt. Likely, you would also tell your friends and family about the opportunity so that they too could benefit from it. Even so, you wouldn't earn the gift by following the man's instructions. The gift is still a gift. Likewise, Jehovah's Witnesses believe God's promise of everlasting life for all who obey him. We endeavor to share our faith with others, hoping that they will benefit from God's promises. But we don't believe that we earn our salvation by engaging in our ministry. Really, no human could ever do enough to merit such an outstanding blessing from God. He saved us because of his mercy and not because of any good things we have done. What these paragraphs are saying is that Jehovah's Witnesses are only going out in field service because they just want to tell people about God's promises. There's no obligation here. They're doing this solely because of their love of man, and they want to tell everybody about paradise and what great things God has in store. They are not doing this because they have to. They are doing this because they want to. Now, I want to show you how easy it is to point out the contradictions in their own literature. Like I always say, the proof is in the publication. So if you are listening to this and you're, doing something else and you're not actually looking at the screen, I would ask you just for a moment to direct your attention to the screen, because I have a screen recording here. I'm going to show you how you can get to a complete contradiction of this answer without even leaving their website. So here I am. I'm at the frequently asked question that I just read. I'm scrolling down. I'm scrolling all the way down to the Watchtower online library. I'm going to type in blood guilty or blood guilt into the search bar. And then I'm going to click on the Watchtower index. And look at that. Look at one of the options right there. For failure to preach. It's right there. It's actually an option when you type in blood guilt on the Watchtower online library. There is an entire section about how you can be blood guilty if you do not go out in field service. I don't know. That sounds like an obligation to me. I mean, just saying. So let's look at one of the articles in that little in that section. So this is the February 15th, 1974, widening out in our love for mankind. So paragraph 19. The question for this paragraph actually says, why will unfaithful ones not be free from blood guilt? So it says, but this will not free from blood guilt individuals who fail to show real love and concern for fellow men. To illustrate, if a father neglected his child so that it came into a perilous situation, he would not be without guilt, even if someone else rescued the child from death. Similarly, one professing to be a servant of Jehovah but failing in his duty toward others would not be guiltless. His loveless, unconcerned attitude would be tantamount to murder. Just keep that in mind. He would not be able to excuse himself on the basis that he did some preaching, for Jehovah God would know the degree of negligence and would pass judgment accordingly. So this is in direct contradiction to what we just read in the FAQ page. This article is saying if you don't preach enough, not even just if you don't preach, you could preach, but if you don't preach enough, there will be blood on your hands. You are a murderer, because when Jehovah kills all the wicked people at Armageddon, aka all the people who don't want to be Jehovah's Witnesses, you will be at fault if you had a chance to preach to some of these people and you didn't do your job. Like, they're basically saying it's considered manslaughter. But the frequently asked questions page just said, no, they don't earn their salvation by going door to door. It's just something we do because we love people. What is the truth? Okay, Watchtower, what is the truth? And the reason this really stuck out to me is because this is one of those things that started my intrusive thoughts that eventually manifested into obsessive compulsive disorder. And I don't mean like, oh, I'm so OCD because I keep my closet clean. No, like, I had clinically diagnosed obsessive compulsive disorder. And it would start with things like this. I vividly remember instances where I would go out in field service. I would give a presentation at the door. You know, the person would say no, they weren't interested, whatever. And when I would walk away from the door, I would keep replaying my presentation in my mind. Like, I would repeatedly play it back and stress over, you know, did I not do my part? Did I not give the presentation in the best way possible? You know, like, oh, if I would have put more emphasis on this scripture, would they have accepted the literature? And this used to really scare me because I didn't want to be responsible for somebody getting destroyed in Armageddon because I didn't do a good enough job preaching. So this caused a lot of stress on me at a young age. I mean, I was probably a teenager at this point. So this really was a legitimate fear of mine, having blood on my hands because of not preaching. So it's really irritating me that they're in their FAQ page saying like, oh no, that doesn't mean our life or death. You know, we're just doing that because we want to do it. And if that article wasn't enough for you, here's a clip of Tony Morris, one of the members of the governing body. This is at the 2014 special meeting, and he's discussing field service and blood guilt. So let's take a quick look at that.
The warning work. We share in the preaching work. Many will do it tomorrow because you're joining the program today. You had your Watchtower summary today. The fact is, this is blood guilt, and you take a good look at your hands, your families, and the single folks too will benefit. And the kind of blood on your hands that is spoken of here is figurative. You don't see it right there, but if you're really not actively sharing in the warning work, when God looks at your hands, could well be seeing blood. So if he sees blood on our hands, we're going with the ones we're supposed to warn. It's that serious. Not a light matter. And sometimes folks talk about this relative, that relative, you know, they're baptized, but they've been going through a hard time, they're not preaching. And we love the inactive, we're going to try to help them. But, you know, they talk about Jehovah like he's going to understand all this. I'm like, what Jehovah are they talking about? I don't know him. He's not in here. That's your idea. This is serious business. It's life and death, whether we share in the warning work.
It's life and death whether we share in the warning work. Again, direct contradiction from what the FAQ answer says. So I'm confused. I want Tony Morris to look me in my face and explain to me the contradiction. I want him to add that math up because it's not adding up to me. He's sitting here saying the people who are inactive, which if you don't know, inactive people are Jehovah's Witnesses who have not been out of field service for, I believe, 6 months or more. So they have not turned in any time. They have not spent any time, going out and talking to other people about the organization and trying to recruit new people in. He's saying it doesn't matter what their circumstances are, what their reason may be for being inactive. If when Armageddon comes, if you have blood on your hands because you haven't been preaching, you have the same fate that they have. You're getting destroyed right along with them. He just said that. I remember sitting in the audience listening to that. And I remember looking at my hands when he told the audience, look at your hands. Do you have blood on them? And again, this caused me a lot of anxiety because I wanted to make sure I was doing all I could so that I would not be responsible for people being destroyed and, me ultimately being destroyed because I didn't preach. It's fascinating that they can just type an outright lie. Some of the things they put out, it's a little bit deceitful. They may have a part of the truth and they may omit the other part, but this is just a flat out lie. Okay. So let's move on to the next frequently asked question, which is, do Jehovah's Witnesses force their children to adopt their faith? The answer says no, because worshiping Jehovah God is a personal decision. Jehovah's Witnesses teach their children Bible principles, but when the children grow older, each one must decide for himself whether he will become one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Like most parents, Jehovah's Witnesses want the best for their children. They teach their children what they think will benefit them, practical skills, as well as moral principles and religious beliefs. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that the Bible promotes the best way of life, so they try to instill its values in their children by studying the Bible with them and attending Christian meetings together. Each child, when he grows older, can then make an informed decision about whether to adopt his parents' faith. So if I didn't know anything about Jehovah's Witnesses and I read this article, I would think, oh, okay, cool. That seems reasonable that a parent will raise their child the best way they know how. They would teach them what they feel is the best way of life. And then when a child grows older, in my mind, growing older is like, late teen, early 20s, like older, like an adult. And then they can decide, what they want to do. If this is something that resonates with them, they can accept it or they can go another route in life. But is that really how it goes in an organization? Speaking as a born-in, I'm going to have to say no, that's not how it goes. So the March 15th, 1988. The title of this article is Trust in Jehovah Leads to Dedication and Baptism. So basically the whole gist of this article is, deciding when you're ready to be baptized and the importance of it and yada, yada, yada. So paragraph 20, I'm not going to read that one, but that just explains why Jehovah's Witnesses don't do infant baptism. And then now I'm going to read paragraph 21. But it seems that some among Jehovah's people have gone to the other extreme. Many Christian parents let their children wait until they are in their late teens before broaching the subject of baptism. Time and again, we hear of youngsters making a valid dedication solely on their own initiative. For example, the preteen son of an elder sincerely wanted to get baptized. So his father had 3 other elders discuss with the youngster the questions designed for those contemplating baptism. Their conclusion was that, though quite young, he qualified to be baptized as an ordained minister of Jehovah God. Why? Attending the Pioneer Service School in the Bahamas recently was a 10-year-old baptized girl, the daughter of 2 full-time ministers. So, again, this frequently asked question paragraph makes it seem as if, let a child grow older, let them get their brains fully developed before, you start worrying about dedicating your life to God. Here, they consider waiting until you're in your late teens extreme. So they're like, oh, no. Like, you don't wait until, 19, 18, that's just, now you're just putting it off for too long. And then they give an example at the end of a 10-year-old who got baptized. What do you know about what you want to do with the rest of your life at 10 years old? Riddle me that. And see, this is where the organization likes to play little word games because, Jehovah's Witnesses are saying they don't force children to get baptized. Now, okay, sure, they don't use physical force. I will agree with that. Elders are not walking around assembly halls, snatching kids out of the stands and forcing them into the baptism pool. No, you're not doing that. But let's not act like manipulation and coercion isn't a thing here. Like, we're not going to pretend like those aren't things. A Jehovah's Witness child is not allowed to do objective research on their religion. They're not allowed to read other religious pamphlets and see what resonates with them the best. They're definitely not allowed to go to other churches or religious ceremonies and make a decision about what fits well with them. You're not allowed to be friends with people of other beliefs and gain different perspectives. You're only allowed to associate with people who are saying this is the one true religion. And you can't forget about the not so subtle threats that you're hearing at the meetings every week about those who choose not to get baptized are going to be destroyed at Armageddon. And in addition to the not so subtle threats, you also have this not so subtle imagery in the publications that you're consuming as a child, where there's all these depictions of Armageddon, people being killed, buildings up in flames, people flying off of buildings. And then even in the publications that are geared toward children, Example, my book of Bible stories have some pretty graphic images in there. People on the ground, people bleeding out, Jehovah drowning people in the flood, another one, people falling out of buildings. So the implication there being, look, Jehovah has killed before. He's murdered before. He's really with that action, and he'll do it again. And he'll do it to you if you don't dedicate your life. So I'm going to have to say that in a way they are forced, especially too. Again, I can't speak for every congregation, but I know specifically for my congregation, once we reached a certain age, probably about 14, 15, the kids who were not baptized started to get excluded from things. Like I mentioned in my Why I Left Jehovah's Witnesses video, there were a lot of children in my Kingdom Hall, so there were parents, they were always planning parties and things like that. Once we got to teenage years, the kids who weren't baptized, they were getting X'd off of the invite list because they were considered bad association at that point. It's like, oh, what, you're 15 years old, you still haven't decided to dedicate your life? Like, no, you can't be around my kids anymore, you're bad association. So you have a child being ostracized. All kids want to be accepted. Most people want to be accepted, okay? Yes, it's very easy to be like, you know what, I don't care what anybody thinks of me. Humans are social creatures, okay? On some level, we care what people think of us. When you're growing up in the Kingdom Hall and you're in that close community and you're a teenager, yeah, you care. When you're being ostracized and you're hearing about all these parties that you weren't invited to, and you see kids congregating after the meeting and you're just kind of hanging out on the outskirts, yeah, it affects you. It makes you think, you know what, I probably need to get baptized too. But you really have no idea what you're really getting yourself into. Now, again, if that wasn't enough, we have another little clip from Tony Morris because, you know, he's great at these things. He's talking about child baptism. So let's watch that clip.
We've mentioned that before. Well, I'm not ready to get baptized. Okay, let's hold off on your driver's license. What? I'm 16. What are you talking about? I'm ready. I know I'm ready. Yeah, you're ready for a driver's license, but you're not ready to dedicate your life. Explain that one to heaven. That's why we repeat.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. In addition to the manipulation, the threats, the pressure for a child to get baptized, now you have a governing body member saying, hey, if they're not baptized by 16, maybe you shouldn't let them get their driver's license. And I think it's important to pay attention to what's happening here. You have people in the audience listening to this. You have parents in the audience who believe that this man is speaking from God, right? So maybe they're side-eyeing their children during this talk. You know, maybe little Johnny, he's 14 and a half. He hasn't said a word about baptism. What can I withhold from him? What can I take away from him that will encourage him to want to get baptized? We're talking about minors, okay? We are talking about kids. We're talking about kids whose brains are not even fully developed, who have not even been able to do the research to know if this is an organization they want to be a part of for the rest of their lives. I think it's in direct contradiction of what this FAQ page is saying, that they don't force their children to get baptized, but you withhold things from them that have nothing to do with baptism. A driver's license has nothing to do with a kid getting baptized. But he's saying, hey, whatever you have to withhold from them or take from them, which will make life, you know, just so unbearable that they'll just go ahead and oblige and get baptized, do it. Go ahead and do it. Nope, they should not be able to wait until they are adults. They should not be able to wait until their brains are fully developed. Nope, they need to do it right now. And again, in addition to you being ostracized in the Kingdom Hall, you have all this pressure from adults. You're afraid of Armageddon. You're afraid of getting destroyed if you're not baptized. And then now you have your parents saying, hey, video games, no, you can't play those anymore till you get baptized. A driver's license, no. Anything you enjoy or anything you benefit from, now your parents are holding that over your head saying, well, you can get this back when you get baptized. That's forcing. I'm sorry. That's forcing a child into baptism. I actually had a friend. I mean, I'm blocked now because, you know, I didn't want to be a Jehovah's Witness, so we couldn't be friends, of course. But she was one of my best friends growing up. And I remember being at her house one day and she and her dad got into like this really heated conversation because he was asking her why she was not baptized yet. And she was probably about 14 at the time. And when I say this conversation got really heated, like she was crying, he was screaming at her, basically saying, if you know this is the truth, like, why wouldn't you want to get baptized? And he was just like really like just pressuring her. And this is the kind of pressure young people face when they grew up in Jehovah's Witness households. And she had a good argument. She was saying she wanted to wait to make sure it was something she was doing for herself and not her parents or people in the congregation. She wanted to make sure it was a completely personal decision, which she had a valid point. But that's not what they're after here. They don't want you to get older, because you know what? Most people, if they did wait until they were over 18 and they really went out and lived life and got some life experience and did some real research, they know most of these people never would get baptized. So you have to still get them while they're young and impressionable. But that's all I have to say about that. So let's move on to the last FAQ question we're going to cover today. And that is, do Jehovah's Witnesses feel that they are the only people who will be saved? Now, so it's a brief paragraph, and the answer to that question, they say no. Many millions who lived in centuries past and who weren't Jehovah's Witnesses will have an opportunity for salvation. The Bible explains that in God's promised new world, there is going to be a resurrection of both the righteous and the unrighteous. Additionally, many now living may yet begin to serve God, and they too will gain salvation. In any case, it's not our job to judge who will or won't be saved. That assignment rests squarely in Jesus' hands. Now, what irritates me about this article is that the first explanation they give does not answer the question. And they know what someone means when they say, do Jehovah's Witnesses feel they're the only people who are going to be saved, like in Armageddon? They know exactly what a person is asking when they say that. They're saying, do Jehovah's Witnesses think that their religion is the only religion that's going to get them salvation? Like, do Jehovah's Witnesses think Baptists will be saved? Do Jehovah's Witnesses think Catholics will be saved? People who maybe aren't religious, they're just spiritual, do Jehovah's Witnesses think they're going to be saved? Or is it just you guys? That's what someone is asking when they ask that question. They don't even answer that. They say, oh, people who've lived centuries ago who never got to be Jehovah's Witnesses, they're going to be resurrected and given a chance to become Jehovah's Witnesses. That wasn't the question, okay? And they know it's not. So they beat around the bush a little bit. And then again, they say many now living may become Jehovah's Witnesses. That's not the question. No one cares about that. We're not talking about just Jehovah's Witnesses. We're trying to figure out, do you think other people will be saved or just your organization? You're talking about people who could have been Jehovah's Witnesses, would have been Jehovah's Witnesses, might be Jehovah's Witnesses. It's not the question. It's not the question. And then at the end of this paragraph, this is where the flat out lie comes in. They say, it's not our job to judge who will or won't be saved. That's up to Jesus. Yeah, sounds great. It sounds great, but some of your articles are saying a little bit different. So let's look at the February 15th, 1983 Watchtower. You can live forever on paradise earth, but how? So this paragraph is talking about, paradise and all that good stuff. They're talking about all these requirements on how you can get into paradise. And I think this third requirement is very interesting. A third requirement is that we be associated with God's channel, his organization. God has always used an organization. For example, only those in the ark in Noah's day survived the flood, and only those associated with the Christian congregation in the first century had God's favor. Similarly, Jehovah is using only one organization today to accomplish his will. To receive everlasting life in the earthly paradise, we must identify that organization and serve God as part of it. I thought you just said you didn't know who was going to be saved or not. I thought that was Jesus' job, but you made it your job in this article because you're like, oh, only one true organization is this one, and this is actually a requirement to get in paradise is to be a part of this organization. But I thought you weren't judging. I thought that wasn't your field. Like, I thought that was up to Jesus, but you just made it your job. Okay. Moving on to You Can Live Forever on Paradise Earth. This is chapter 30 of that book. The subheading or the title of this chapter is What You Must Do to Live Forever. So again, you're telling people how they can live forever, but then you're also saying you can't really do that because it's not your job to judge. Okay. Anyway, paragraph 14 says, do not conclude that there are different roads or ways that you can follow to gain life in God's new system. There is only one. There was just the one ark that survived the flood, not a number of boats. And there will be only one organization, God's visible organization, that will survive the fast approaching Great Tribulation. It is simply not true that all religions lead to the same goal. You must be part of Jehovah's organization doing God's will in order to receive his blessing of everlasting life. Again, you are doing the job that you just said was Jesus's job. To say that no other religions will survive Armageddon is quite literally the opposite of not judging. This is judgment. I'm pretty sure this is judgment. I'm going to show you one more paragraph because I think these are great. I just love calling them out on their lies. It's so fun. It's a great hobby of mine. So this is the December 15, 2007 Watchtower. Are you ready for Jehovah's Day? And this is great. This also ties into the last frequently asked question because this is about young people. So it says, are you helping your children to keep themselves without spot from the world? Satan would like to reel in your children as a man reels in fish. Various clubs and other organizations are designed to make young people fit in with Satan's world. But Jehovah's servants already belong to the only organization that will survive the end of this wicked system of things. So Christian youths should be encouraged to have plenty to do in the work of the Lord. Godly parents need to assist their children to set goals that will give them a happy and rewarding life that honors God and helps them to be ready for Jehovah's Day. So the reason I said this ties into that other FAQ question is because, again, this is the type of literature that young people grow up reading, that, hey, this is the only organization that's going to be left standing after Armageddon. So if I want to be left standing, I have to get baptized, and I got to do it quick because, according to them, Armageddon's like right around the corner or whatever. But yeah, all these articles are saying the same thing. There's only one organization that's going to survive this Armageddon thing. There's only one organization that Jehovah's looking down on, that he approves of. Again, that's literally the opposite of not judging. You can't have it both ways. I'm sorry. Either you believe that you have the right to judge or you don't. If you're not going to judge, it's not your place to say who's going to survive Armageddon. It's just not. And these are the type of things that are all over their FAQ page. And I only wanted to cover those 3. I didn't want to do too many. If you guys like these, I will do a couple more in another video. But yeah, that's all I have for you today. I just really want people who don't know much about Jehovah's Witnesses, who are just doing their Googles and want to know what's really up with this organization. I just want them to run into the real information, okay? I don't want them to read those PR approved answers and think like, oh, this is a harmless religion. Because I think that's kind of the opinion of a lot of people that don't know much about witnesses. Like, they're kind of annoying. They knock on your door early in the morning, but overall they're harmless. No, they're not. And that's why I'm going to keep making videos, because people need to know that they're not. So again, that's all I have for you today. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you all in the next video.